Today, I'm here to talk about tapping into the human capital of a city you may be familiar with its popular farmers market, summer art shows and festivals, a growing number of yuppies and hipsters, and it's the original home of the University of Michigan. Of course, I'm talking about Detroit. Yes. Notice I didn't introduce my hometown by mentioning vacancy, high crime rates, or money problems. Trust me, these are still challenges in the Motor City. But in case you haven't noticed, new narratives are being written about Detroit. These narratives include the opening of the upscale natural and organic food store, Whole Foods, new lofts and redeveloped apartment buildings, and a lot of buzz created by Quicken Loans chairman Dan Gilbert, who's purchased the 17 buildings downtown as a part of his greater plan to revitalize the urban core with street-level energy and sidewalk cafes and beautiful public spaces. I noticed some of these changes during my visits home to Detroit from college. They've been going on for a few years now and are even quantifiable. A recent report called 7.2 Square Miles, released by the Hudson Weber Foundation, identified the 7.2 square mile area of greater downtown Detroit as a physically and economically changing place that has amassed about $6 billion in real estate investments since 2006. This area in and around the downtown is more diverse, particularly more white, wealthier, and more educated than the rest of the city as a whole, with these trends expected to accelerate over the next decade. Now, some would call this gentrification, which is more or less the transition of a neighborhood caused by the in-migration of middle and upper middle class residents who are most often white, and the resulting forced out-migration of low-income residents who are frequently people of color. Others suggest that given Detroit's status as a poor city, that new housing and businesses are simply infill development to attract a stronger middle-income tax base, especially since no one's really being pushed out by it. Still, I wonder, what about the rest of the city? As I participate in U of M's Semester in Detroit program this term, I found myself in the middle of two very different worlds. One day, I sat in a new coffee shop, surrounded by a crowd of after-work young professionals in their pea coats and wood-rimmed glasses, sipping their lattes and on their MacBooks. But as I sat there, I couldn't help but notice some of the people passing by the front window of the cafe facing Woodward Avenue. Some elderly, moving past the window in their wheelchairs with plastic bags attached to them that carried their own human waste. Others in dirty and tattered clothing who look like they may not have had a full meal or bath in weeks. In other words, I saw a tale of two cities right before my very eyes. One black, poorer, representing the Detroit of old, and the other one more diverse and overwhelmingly white, wealthier, representing this new Detroit. Now, since I'm in Ann Arbor, I'll make it clear, I am in no way hating on hipsters. Instead, I'm critiquing the larger forces of urban policy and economic development that may not be fully tapping into the needs of Detroit's dominant and most vulnerable population of black, working class, and poor residents who are already in the city and have been for a while. In fact, my research interviewing some of these Detroiters illuminated their fears of physical displacement, disempowerment, and how their neighborhoods and livelihoods are being less valued than that of incoming residents. Now, don't get me wrong, I realize Detroit does need newcomers who will strengthen the tax base and municipal resources. I also realize there are bigger forces at play here, like urban sprawl, the constant flow of people and resources into the suburbs, leading to the concentrated poverty of inner city residents of color who have far less access to those same economic opportunities. But in addition to these things, if the Motor City is to ever be revitalized, that more attention and policy must tap into the profound networks and community-based work already in the city that is transforming lives. I'm talking about the churches and communities of faith you can find in nearly every corner of Detroit, like Pastor Matthew Bodie and the Spirit of Hope Church, where they serve nearly 11,000 free meals every year to the hungry, clean up vacant lots, parks, and streets, and partner with my aunt's organization, Gospel Against AIDS, to distribute condoms and safer sex kits. I'm talking about the work of the Young Educators Alliance, a group of young adults whom I interned with this semester and who identify issues in Detroit and come up with creative solutions, from community dialogues about the ill effects of food assistance cutbacks in Michigan to our most recent work helping to organize and participate in a march against the school-to-prison pipeline. I'm talking about the work of the growing urban gardening and agriculture movement in Detroit, like that of Neighbors Building Brightmoor, which Semester in Detroit participants and I volunteered to assist in their efforts of using community gardens to create healthy, sustainable, and beautiful communities for themselves. And I'm talking about the work of Maureen Taylor. I met Mama Maureen, as we call her, during one of my internship workdays. A longtime Detroiter, Mama Maureen has dedicated her life's purpose to being a soldier in the war against the poor. As a state chairperson of the Michigan Welfare Rights Organization, she works with political leaders and corporations to draft policies and procedures that protect poor and low-income families. And recently, she's been working to help prevent the water, gas, and electricity shutoffs for thousands of low-income households in Detroit. So when she's not on the front lines of a march or a protest, she can be seen helping welfare recipients to occupy some of Detroit's many vacant and foreclosed homes. Despite the touchy legal issues with this kind of work, she uses vacancy as an asset to serve the needs created by Detroit's growing poverty. When I asked Mama Maureen what motivates all of her awesome work in securing human rights, she responded by giving me her life's philosophy. The needs of the few can never outweigh the needs of the many. The needs of the few can never outweigh the needs of the many. It was then that I remembered something that I learned earlier doing my own activism in the city before coming to college, and that is Detroit is a wealthy city, and its greatest wealth is its people. Those on the front lines every day and every week working to build up their city, their communities, and their neighborhoods. I also realized that as we move towards an increasingly urbanized nation and world, we must tap into the needs of our city's most neglected citizens. And in the case of Detroit's revitalization, stakeholders must tap into the networks of everyday people and organizations already doing the transformative work of rebuilding their city and its residents. And so now I leave it to you to not only encourage you to tap into the awesome community building work going on in this great city, just 43 miles east of here, but also I challenge you to reflect not only on how you will tap into your own unique purpose, but how you will use that to serve your own community, including the most vulnerable among us. Thank you.